when does the love and understanding begin, and the fighting stop between man and woman?
If you want to accelerate your journey and your healing and your own personal evolution, try working in this way.
We're getting to the point of the video now. It begins when the man surrenders, first and foremost, in reverence to the power of the feminine. Like the power of the feminine isn't physical in nature. You know, men always put women down and go, oh, they're not stronger than me. But spiritually, they are profoundly much stronger than men in a default, as a default. That it doesn't have to remain that way. And that's not a competition, by the way. It's, you know, the feminine energy is beyond comprehension of the unconscious man, because you can only understand it when you deeply listen and surrender to the entirety of it, because it's the entirety of creation. You know, we live and we are born through the creation of a womb. Our bodies are born from the makeup of this earth, from the feminine herself. I mean, it's crazy to shout insults and distortions towards the feminine when you're literally stood on one. And you can see how this war between the feminine and the masculine, how it echoes out into the world. So if you look at the war in Russia and Ukraine, which we've been focused on, because that has come up a lot in some of our ceremonies, because we were looking at ourselves. And then, you know, we were getting messages saying, well, there's something you're ignoring, something very big. We were like, what is it? And it's, you know, it's what a lot of people ignore when there's, you know, oh, there's a war going on. That's not my problem. You know, it's in another country. But it affects all of us. You know, it's essentially two boys playing with their toys. One boy gets upset and because, you know, the other has more friends and he wants to feel important. So they start throwing their toys at each other. And it causes nasty energy in the room, and so then the mother comes in to calm them down. But in this situation, their mothers aren't there, so they've got these partners, wives, girlfriends to support them. But those women in their life, they're supporting that war. So this also needs to end, because women have to stop defending and supporting these toxic men within themselves, because we hold masculine and feminine energies, and their partners. And this is exactly what Hazel had to do, what I had to do. But behind all that is the true war between masculine and feminine, because it's the raging destruction of artilleries, toxic waste, the bombs destroying the nature, destroying Gaia. You know, it's the true war, the invisible hands which are guiding the unconscious man to destroy nature for profit. You know, this is what's being ignored. This is the greatest distortion of humanity there ever was. It's called ignorance.
Yeah, well done. Well done. And I just want to say about how difficult it is to recognize these energies and to stop the war, because you say, well, yeah, okay, there's this woman who's acting like a tart, or, you know, or is into porn, or there is this woman who doesn't look after herself, or you know. And when you can see like the whole bigger picture of, you know, through the eyes of compassion, like how that woman or how these women or how these people got into that state, and understand the mechanisms in how that woman got to that state, understand the mechanisms in how that man got to that state, it's almost like, yeah, there is nothing else to do apart from be in war. And that's why men and women are in war, because they're so far disconnected from the true nature of themselves. So this is why we are sharing our journey, because our journey has been about breaking free from those chains, breaking free from those illusions, breaking free from everything that we've been taught is, well, you know, even like, oh, that's just part of life. And, you know, breaking free from all of that so that we can actually find a way to come together. And one of the most powerful things is that when I started working with Alistair, because I'd done teachings at leadership trainings around consciousness and 3 lines of consciousness, you know, like the
All
Gurdjieff.
microphones covered.
The 3 lines of consciousness, you know, I studied some Gurdjieff as well in terms of I, you, and we. Now, most people, you know, when you start from this journey, you have to love yourself first, which is what we're talking about. And that is fundamental. But actually, what I realized when I started opening and cracking open even more was that all 3 lines of consciousness are fundamentally working simultaneously at the same time through everything.
Yeah.
And if you want to accelerate your journey and your healing and your own personal evolution, try working in this way, which is how we've been working. And it super, super elevates you. What do I want to say? Accelerates you, because you realize you start to embody this oneness consciousness where everything is connected, but in a very grounded way. So these women and these men who are having problems relating, you can see it. You can see it all. And actually, what I found interesting, what you were saying about the war and about the women having to stop defending and supporting the war because of their own toxicities within themselves, their own abandonment issues, their own not being able to recognize their self-worth because of their abuse.
The father abandonment.
Yeah. So, and all of these can oscillate between men and women all the time. And we've also worked with this. We've oscillated and turned the tables continually, not only on the 3 lines of consciousness, but between men and women, and how the man works within me and how the feminine works within you. And realizing actually, they're enabling that toxic part of those women who are still being in partnership with those men who are fighting, whether it's, you know, abusing you or hitting you or, you know, suppressing you in your relationships, or even extended out to these wars. The women are enabling the men, and yet we've been so suppressed that we can't even say no to it. It's like when I was in my toxic relationships, I didn't even recognize or think that I had the option to say no and to work within all of that. And this is where you realize, when you start working with and you get real about facing the truth of narcissism, which is what we've worked on, you know, so very deeply, which is what so many people don't want to hear about, is when you actually realize, wow, they are enabling war. It's that act of enabling, remaining blind, unconscious to the destruction that is happening to life and love itself. When you realize you're enabling that and you take responsibility for that, then things can change. And that can happen if we take that, you know, so we go from the war, we go from relationships, and then you bring that into the one, into yourself. When you are treating yourself badly, you know, and I'm still healing many parts of these things for myself. When I treat myself badly, for example, you know, I'm really struggling with getting back into my body and my exercise and reclaiming my fitness, because I'm trying to come out and realizing, I'm safe now. I don't have to have the extra weight on. I'm safe. I can relax into that. But I have been the one, because I've been trained to enable this fighting and this war and to support the toxic men who've been in my life. I am now left with the residue of that behavior that is within me. And this is one of the levels of self-love and purification that we're talking about, is that we have to stop enabling that toxicity within ourselves. And this is where these like precision levels of consciousness are working through this and owning up to this, like every single day, you know, getting more and more conscious about this, really enables change. And this is one of the things that I find so profound about our work, is because we're talking about consciousness. We can talk about coding, we can talk about downloads, we can talk about all of these different things, but what really matters is, how do you decode that, connect all of the dots, realize, like, what do you do with this greater consciousness that you might get through meditation or plant medicine or journeys or traveling or whatever it is you're doing? What happens when you're back home and you're here and you're back in your body and you decide, wow, I have this one life and I've got to live with it? This is why our work is so profound because we work with grounding it, and it's like, okay, you've
Yeah.
got all of this, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Are you actually going to make a better life? Are you actually going to make better relationships? Are you actually going to heal these things? And are you going to do all of it? Well, I decided I was going to have it all of it across all 3 lines of consciousness.
Yeah.
and that's how we've been working. And so
Yeah.
it disenables, it starts disenabling that which has enabled the fight, that which has enabled the war before. And this is where we start breathing new life. You were saying about coming up from the waters. You start breathing new life and realizing, wow, oh my goodness, like with myself, wow, I'm safe. I'm safe to live with you. Okay, I can start lowering my guards. I can start feeling safe in my body again, letting my beauty come through, letting my health come through.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to guard myself. I don't have to defend myself anymore. And this is such profound healing. And this is where I can then surrender to the feminine as well.
Yeah. And for my journey has been about feeling safe from the masculine, because the majority, not all of it, but the majority of my abuse came from the masculine. A lot of violence in my life, and so I can understand, and I did understand when I first met Hazel, that she wanted to feel safe in front of me, because I don't feel safe in front of most men, because they still hold that distortion of violence. And if I hold that distortion of violence, they see that in me. There have been times where I've walked up the road, just walking, or just minding my own business, and I've been hit over the back of the head with a baseball bat. I've been punched in the face. I've had my head split open numerous occasions. And I had to go deep in to understand why that was, why violence followed me. And, I want to talk about what I'm talking about and what you just mentioned. Essentially, what you're talking about, right? We're trying to talk about, the subtitle is of this part of this section is "It's the woman's fault," right? But what you just described essentially is the journey of the warrior, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about the archetype of the warrior. So if you don't know about the 4 archetypes, they're really powerful to work with in this way. So there's the lover, the warrior. So the warrior leaves home. So the lover, it was representation of the heart, it's representation of the home. The warrior leaves, then it's the sovereignty, becomes king, and the magician. And the magician essentially gives guidance to the king gives authority to the warrior, and in his purity, after the warrior has been to battle, he goes home to his love, to his wife.
And he can protect the heart.
Yeah, but that's not happening in society. He doesn't go home. Instead, he goes out and finds another woman, or burns a village down, and creates a war, or besieges a king, and you get dark wizards and you get dark kings. And so these are all the archetypes you have to purify and come back to the heart, because the heart is the most profound and powerful part of it all, And the truth is that both sides need to take responsibility, but there is a responsibility and purpose intertwined into this war, because, like I said earlier, the purpose is being forgotten and ignored. It's the responsibility of the masculine to protect the feminine. He must first and foremost protect the feminine from himself. And so, yeah, like we've been holding. We were talking about, Hazel was talking about holding space, and that's on its own, that's a difficult task, to learn how to hold space. And so I'll give you a really bland, basic example. So the man, I would say to Hazel, I've been lying to you. I wish to atone for my lies and take responsibility for my lies. Will you forgive me? And I'm like, oh my God, oh. And then Hazel would then respond, in a practical sense. This is kind of about how we did it. She will say, thank you for sharing your vulnerability in your shame of lying. I too have lied and I have shame. Will you forgive me? But it's not always like that, as I said. sometimes it's just me coming saying, I'm wrong, will you forgive me? And she's like, yes. And then well, are you gonna say to me now? And she's like, no, you know. And this is where, you know, there's some pride needs to be swallowed, and the ego, because sometimes in those areas of distortion, the woman doesn't have that distortion, and so you can't always expect the woman to come and say, well, I'm sorry too, because sometimes it's your fault.
Yeah.
And you know, there were so many times that happened to me where I was, you know, it made me really angry, because I was like, yeah, it was my fault, yeah, I'm sorry. And it's only in the holding the space for each other that can the division and separation between man and woman be healed. And I don't mean this lightly, but you know, when this happens, when that happens, because it will happen, the whole world will heal, and a new wave of consciousness, the one that everybody is waiting for and, you know, discussing, it will open a rainbow bridge to the newearth, you know. But you just need a pure heart to access it. But you know, that rainbow bridge isn't about unicorns or your sexuality. It's the collective expression of the unity of consciousness within the human body, within all the chakras in alignment. It's the purified presence, and so much more. You know, my channel, I've got my personal YouTube channel, it's called the Sacred Rainbow Warriors. It's based on the prophecy that we follow. That's why we call our channel the Prophecy Walkers. It's not called the Sacred Rainbow Warrior because I'm a warrior that wants to fight and I love rainbows. You know, it's the discovery, the true journey of man. It's the purification of the warrior through the color of his own love. You know, and and the word fight, as I said earlier, it's to fight and stand for love. So it's the prophecy of what will come to pass. It's the legend of unity. So yeah, I'll put a link in the description about the Hopi prophecy. It touches on this for our next video.
Yeah, I think what's amazing about well, I want to come back to that, is that it was really important what you said about protecting the feminine, because once you realize, okay, my path to becoming a better man is not only to surrender to the feminine first, like, oh my God, but she's at fault too, I've got to surrender to her first, but to understand the mechanisms of how to do that, and to have a woman who understands the mechanisms of how that works, so is able to hold that level of space. Because what you said, you know, when you realizing, when you were on this process, some of our later ceremonies, you realize, wow, once you realized what the fight was going on within you, you realize you had to protect me from you.
Yeah.
And then when you start to realize that, you get to a whole other level of taking responsibility, a whole other level of accessing the truth and the power and the vibration of love within you. And this is so profound, to be able to hold this space and allow this space to be open for the man, for the masculine, because you were talking about the feminine being vibration and understanding that and holding that, and to be able to share that gift, you know, which I've always known was in me, and to finally be able to share that with a man who listens so deeply to that, and to be able to give this gift to another man, like in the picture that we've put for this video. You know, it's like holding that gift of light, but not only for yourself, you're sharing it together. And that's so beautiful, and it's so powerful, and it's true. It's absolutely true that that can happen.